the Freedom Caucus. It's a special group. A very, very conservative group. They believe like you do. Just like you do. Biblical values. Biblical worldview. And politics. In fact, one of the guys here, Josiah, wrote a book on civics. He's going to talk about it. It's the Bible and civics.
Wow.
We got to get that. You know, these kids got to get that. Adults and kids got to get it. Anyway, we'll be talking about it. But it's very nice that you're here. All of you. Some of you went to that hearing today. Some drove a long ways. Some only drove from Rock Hill. But the thing is, you're here. We thank you for coming. And I know we look forward to hearing from everyone of you explaining your policies, your platforms, what you stand for, and what's going to happen in 2026 as the legislature. And I know these people are Christians. They need a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
Right. They've been marginalized sometimes. And sometimes their bills are the best that they can offer, but they can't get introduced. Or if they get introduced, they kind of get marginalized. Or at the end, they get amendments, and they weaken the bills. We don't like that.
No.
We like real bills, parental rights, pro-life. They'll get to it. But the thing is, it's an honor they came in here tonight, especially on a work night. And I saw somebody just came in the back door a while ago, front door. Elizabeth Inns, she's here. I think she's running for office. Anyway, we'll get started. I want to introduce Jackie Taribal. She's going to introduce the members, and they're going to be talking, and she's going to be running the show here because she lives in York County. But I tell you what, she is a representative. She's my representative right now. And guess what? What district am I in? I'm in 26. Which one is she in? 66. Where do I have to go to get representation? Where do you have to go? Where did you go, Joe?
26.
He went straight to 66.
66.
Anyway, she's serving the people. I want you to know that. She served one of ours very, very well. She took care of a personal problem, and I'll guarantee you it was life-changing. And we thank you for it very much. Very, very much. One of the things the girl was for is to serve the people. She served the people. All these people here serve the people. Without further ado, let's get rocking and rolling, Jackie. Come on up. Up there, it's fine.
Does this one work?
I'll get out of the
Here?
way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just have to be close. I have to be close? Oh, okay. Is it working? Yes. Okay.
You guys okay?
You can use that one for that.
You guys, sure. Let's go right there. That's positive.
Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you all for having us tonight. I'm glad to be back. My name is Jackie Terrabiel. I am the House District Representative for District 66, which is the other side of Fort Mill. And like Larry said, if you ever have an issue and you need anything, I am happy to serve you as I serve the constituents in my own district. I am a first-time representative. I was elected last year. I don't think of myself as a politician. I'm a mom of 2 boys, and that is why I got into the political realm. I, along with some other moms in our area, I started Moms for Liberty, York County, 4.5 years ago. And from there, I was appointed to the State Board of Education by our local delegation. And then I served for 2 years until my representative, David O'Neill, decided he was going to retire. And I said, David, what strong conservative are we going to support for your position? And he said, well, maybe you would run. And I went home, I talked to my husband, we prayed about it, and I realized that why not? We should have regular people representing us at the State House. And so I ran,
There you go.
and thanks to the support of most of you in this room and so many other people, I won my seat and just finished up my first year serving.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful, so thank you. And when I ran, many people just assumed that I was going to join the Freedom Caucus, and I was very blessed and lucky that the Freedom Caucus invited me to caucus with them and then eventually asked me to join. It's a wonderful group of conservative leaders in our state house, this group, as we'll explain, is just a fantastic supportive group that really teaches you how to do everything that you need to do at the State House. They really guided all of the new people and made it so much easier for us to be effective effective leaders at the State House. And so I'd like to introduce my colleagues to all of you. I'm going to start right here with my Columbia bestie. This is Representative Sarita Edgerton. She's from Spartanburg. And we've got Representative Jay Kilmartin in the center here. Jay is from, is it Irmo? Is that your area? Columbia area. So he came up from Columbia, so thank you, Jay.
Wow.
And then on the end, we've got Representative Josiah Magnuson down there. He's also from the Spartanburg area. Josiah has been in the State House. He's our senior member here representing tonight. And Josiah is going to tell you, start off by telling you what is the South Carolina Freedom Caucus and what do we do?
Thank you, Jackie. Hello. Yes, so thank you, Jackie. I appreciate the warm introduction, and I'm also grateful for the South Carolina Freedom Caucus. And I really appreciate these ladies and gentlemen that are here because they are putting their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, as it were, on the line. You know, their reputations, their finances, they're putting it all out there to try to protect our freedoms and to hold the legislature accountable to try to do the right thing. What is the South Carolina Freedom Caucus? So we are a team of legislators, and this is 4 of us. There's, somewhere in the upper teens. It kind of varies by the day because sometimes people vote with us and sometimes they decide to go their own way. But we have a great group of folks that are working together, mostly trying to hold each other accountable, because that's where it starts. We have to actually edify and exhort one another. I love the scripture in the book of Hebrews that talks about that we're to edify and exhort one another daily. And so we are a group that I think we're all believers in Christ, and we try to edify and exhort one another to serve the people, as was mentioned, rather than the special interests, rather than the lobbyists and the bureaucrats that a lot of times get so much of an outsized influence in Columbia. So that's what we're there to do, and it's just a bunch of regular people, business owners. We really have a heart, I think, to change the state of South Carolina, to reform the government, to work for the people, and as also was mentioned, which Larry, I appreciate you mentioning, biblical values. I think that's so important that we have that plumb line, that we don't just go with whatever is popular at the time, but we do have a standard of absolute truth that is found in God's Word, and I think that that's where we ultimately do find the principles of liberty.
Amen.
Jay, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself and maybe
So we don't have an MC.
You know what? When we go on the road, we just have such good conversations.
Yeah. So let's converse. I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. This is my second term, so I'm in the first year of my second term. So then we're up for re-election again next year. But my name is Jay Kilmartin. I'm from District 85, which is Columbia, Chapin, Irmo, and the Freedom Caucus was a godsend, really. I had 2 Freedom Caucus members come up to me when the guy ahead of me was retiring, and they're asking me, kind of like Jackie, like, who are we going to get to run? I'm like, I don't know, help me find somebody. I'll write him a check, I'll do a fundraiser. And literally, I think it was Ryan McCabe, who was another Freedom Caucus member, said, you don't get what we're asking, do you? And I was like, no. And they said, it's you. And I go, okay, this meeting's over. So literally, like Jackie, I went home and told my wife, and she went, what? So we prayed on our knees for 6 days, got up, had 3 opponents, some well-known school board members, a very wealthy attorney, and we beat them all. And I've always been really involved in the community, in different ministries in my church, and I had an army of people working, knocking doors for me. And my first year, they created the Freedom Caucus, and our biggest accomplishment was we got kicked out of the Republican caucus the first week. Because, yeah, I'll tell you why. And a lot of you know this, and a lot of people come into South Carolina and don't realize the problem we have. There's this animal called a rhino, but there's no H-R-I-N-O. And they wanted us to sign a loyalty oath that we wouldn't say anything bad about another Republican. And when you're in meetings with them and you're in the elevator with them, you're caucusing with them, you get to know people intimately. And there's some really not so good people down there.
Right.
And they're not, so we just said, we're not signing that, you know. I went to one meeting, I got some fried chicken, and then a week later, they kicked us out of the lunch and said, you guys are not members. So it made national news, but it was really gratifying because I got to caucus, and caucuses we just meet and strategize together. And I have like 17 at the time, new best friends. We pray together, we caucus together, and we figure out bills and how we're gonna strategize, which they didn't expect, because when we're not in the room with them, we're putting amendments up on the House floor, and it's very, very embarrassing to them because they really can't defend themselves. So we became the obstructionists. They spent millions and millions of dollars to run against us.
That's right.
And there was 11 contested races, and we won every one.
Wow.
And this past 2 weeks ago, we added one member for sure, and I'm pretty sure on the other member. So people in South Carolina are starting to open their eyes to this rhino problem.
Yeah.
We've been constantly graded one of the most liberal red states in the nation. Another big problem is we have the highest percentage of lawyer legislators, and you'll see us always fighting, trying to get judicial reform. We don't have 3 co-equal branches of government. We have the legislative branch that appoints judges and sets their salaries. So you
Right.
see all this nepotism going on. That's a different subject. I just wanted to introduce myself.
All right, all right.
I could ramble on and on and on. And yes, I was at the committee meeting today, the abortion bill, with my wife, who is a volunteer at a Moment of Hope. So she works at the sidewalk at a abortion clinic and tries to talk young, scared women out of killing their babies. And very disappointed in how the meeting ended today. I think they're just going to kill the bill. So, and a bunch of Republicans voted against that bill. So, learn their names and vote them out. Give money to their opponents. So anyway, here's Sarita Edgerton.
Like you said, I'm Sarita Edgerton, and I'm the mother of 4 children. My husband is sitting in the back somewhere. He came with me tonight. Wave your hand, Mike. Yeah.
Bring him up.
He's in a leather chair back there. He'll be asleep in about 2 minutes. We have 4 children. We are in our 21st year of homeschooling. I got my public teaching degree at Winthrop, so I lived in Rock Hill for some time in the 90s. And I got fed up with 2020. I knew pretty quickly off the bat that something wasn't right by the message that was being put forth to society, and I never saw the dead bodies, and I never put on a mask, and I didn't go the right way in the grocery store. I went the wrong way on purpose. I have a little bit of a rebellious streak in me, and I'm pretty sure that's from the fall and Adam and and so I started working, helping out with elections at the polls and doing that, and this burden was just on my heart, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I was complaining about something to my oldest daughter, who's now 23. She did the Charlie Kirk thing and got married at 19. And happily married almost 4 years. And I was just saying something, and she said, "Mom, do you remember when I used to complain because I wanted to have been born and grown up in the 80s because everything was simpler and life was simpler and people were better to each other?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Do you remember what you told me?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You told me that the Lord put me on the earth for such a time as this." Yes. And she said, "What if God put you on the earth for you to do something about whatever it was I was complaining about for such a time as this?" Yes. And it's one thing to teach your children something biblical, it's another thing for them to use it back on you. And so I was turning 50, and I asked my husband for a couple of days in the wilderness that I like to call Myrtle Beach. And it was 70 in February. It was beautiful. I pretty much had the beach to myself. It was me and God and the waves. And Lord, what do you want me to do? I cannot get this burden out of my heart. And he told me, and I came home and I told my husband, I said, I think God wants me to run for office. And he goes, God did not tell you that. And I said, but I think he did. And so we prayed about it together, talked to our family, and I'm glad I didn't know what was coming, because I probably would have been like, I'm not putting my family through that. But we decided to run. My representative was running for Senate, and so his seat was open, and 3 of us were running. And we were all running on the Republican platform. The one guy, there's 2 women and 1 guy. The one guy in the race, he never got off his couch, got 1,000 votes by doing nothing. And the other lady at a pro-life women's event said, I am pro-life, except there are some times when babies are born without arms or legs, and that's not part of God's plan, so abortion should be an option for them. And I tell you, I had to fight to keep, Josiah was at that meeting, I had to fight to keep my jaw from hitting the table. Yep. And that pretty much won the election for me. We had to go into a runoff, and I beat her pretty handily, but for me, I am in this to stop babies from being murdered in the womb.
Yes.
I volunteer at my local pregnancy center. I've been a pro-life activist for almost 2 decades, or more than 2 decades now. I have taught post-abortion Bible studies. I had an abortion at 17 before I became a Christian, and I know the damage and destruction it does to women. And so that's why I fight the way I do. I just counseled a young woman yesterday to not make that choice. Yes. And y'all pray for her, because she's supposed to come in for an ultrasound tomorrow. So we want to pray for her. I can't tell you her name, but y'all pray for her. I know y'all are a praying group, and pray that she makes the right choice. So that's why I do what I do. 2 weeks after I filed, we got the first, I guess they decided that I look like Freedom Caucus. I don't know, because the other 2 hadn't said either, and I didn't even know what the Freedom Caucus, what is a caucus? I knew nothing about running for office. And all of a sudden, she aligns with this group that wants to murder women after having abortions. And I was like, do they know anything did they bother to do any research on me? They would know that is definitely not true, because I would be like killing myself. And then they just started coming, and you get to a point where, okay, if you're gonna lie about me, what else are you lying about? Come on. Yeah. And I did go to the Republican caucus meeting. I'm a freshman like Jackie. I went to the Republican caucus meeting, and I stood up and I said, where were all of you when that guy over there, sitting over there, your campaign consultant, was campaigning against me and saying slanderous things against me? Where were y'all? Yeah. And they didn't have anything to say, and I said, I'm not signing this pledge, and I left. I wasn't going to do that. And so we met with the Freedom Caucus, and they just seemed like my people. And it feels like family. It really, really does. And we have each other's backs. And it can get nasty. And so having somebody down there that, when the fight gets tough and you feel like just putting your head on the table and crying sometimes, I know probably the guys don't feel like that, but or you feel like picking a chair up and throwing it at somebody when Jesus wouldn't do that. We make jokes back and forth to kind of help each other carry the burden when it's heavy, because it is spiritual. It is spiritual warfare that we're in. We want to make South Carolina the red state that everybody thinks South Carolina is.
So I think we'll just tell you, we want to open up to questions, because you might have some questions about some of the things that we're doing, but I do want to say that we do have some priorities for this session. We have some bills that we put forth, the Freedom Caucus members have filed, that we want to get some attention. We and we're gonna share all of this with all of you. I have some sheets up here, and if you go to our website, southcarolinafreedom.com, or you can scan this QR code, you can sign up for the Freedom Caucus email list so that you can keep track of what's happening, what we're doing. We love to have people, to ask you, can you send emails in support of this, or here's what we're doing. We want to keep you up to date on what the battle is going on down in Columbia and what we're doing. So I hope you'll all sign up to get that email. And really, the ways that you can support what we're doing at the State House is to sign up for our email. We also can take donations, unlike what a lot of people say. We don't have any dark money. That is the,
Keep trying to find it.
I don't know where that dark money is going, but it's not going to us. So, obviously we do have some expenses that the Freedom Caucus has. So donations we accept for the caucus to keep us alive. We're just grassroots, regular people. And also just to continue to pray for us, because like Sarita says, it is very dark down there. There is really an evil feeling, and I know a lot of times when I'm driving home on Thursday afternoon and I drive out of Columbia and I'm on the way, I-77 on the way home to Fort Mill, sometimes I can feel it, it's like a feeling that comes off me, and a feeling of just relief to be out of that place. And so please just keep us in your prayers. We, go into the spiritual battle all the time, and we pray with each other every week before we have our caucus meetings, at the beginning of the week, and we pray that God gives us the strength to do what we need to do that week. So we really appreciate that. What is the date of the thing? January 15th? Is it?
The press conference for women is the 14th.
Okay, so January 14th in Columbia, there will be a big press conference for protecting women's private spaces. There's a bill that Sarita, April Cromer, and I filed, and we have a lot of co-sponsors. Do we have co-sponsors? Or
I think we're the original.
Anyway, but that's a bill, and there's another one as well filed by Tommy Pope that's similar. There's bills on that. We want to try to protect women in their bathrooms and their private spaces, right?
Yeah.
Can you believe that we don't have,
We should have had that 10 years ago.
we have a proviso, but that's temporary. We need permanent legislation to protect women and boys. We need to protect everybody in their private spaces and their bathrooms. We need a bathroom bill. So we invite all of you to come down to the State House that day. Come to the press conference. So we hope to have hundreds of people show up to support what we're doing. And we also want to support parental rights that day as well, and some other things. And then we have, Josiah has some medical freedom bills, and we have some other things. Josiah, do you want to talk about some of the important things that we're going to be supporting this session?
Sure, I'd love to. And if I might, I'll kind of introduce myself a little bit too.
Yeah.
I introduced a little bit of what the Freedom Caucus is, but I'd like to also introduce myself since my colleagues got a chance to. Equal time here, people. Okay, I got involved back a long time ago. I was really still a teenager. I was 19 when I kind of by happenstance or by providence became the director of a group called Americans for Constitutional Government in Greenville, and it was a group that had been around for quite a long time. The lady that had been doing it for the last few years was retiring, and they didn't have anybody else that could run the group. So I said, well, I'll run it until we can find somebody else. Well, 5 years later, I was, hosting a monthly meeting still, and we would do 2 banquets a year. It was a really good experience to get my feet wet in volunteering, and that's one thing I tell people is that if you're going to run for office, I recommend for you to get involved in a group first, in a grassroots organization first, which obviously you all are, but really get involved and really serve in the community, and you'll gain so much good experience. So I did that for a little while, and then I felt the Lord was calling me to take the next step, and similar to what Jay and Sarita have described, it was just this sense that the Lord had told me that I needed to run for office, and that I couldn't shake, and I didn't really want to, and I kept coming up with excuses in my mind for why I wouldn't do it. And every excuse that I would come up with, the Lord would solve it somehow. And so I was like, this is frustrating. So finally I got down next to my bed, and like what Jay described as well, I hadn't ever heard that story about how you prayed for 6 days. But I did the same thing. I got down next to my bed and physically kneeled and basically gave the race to God and said, God, if you want me, I'm going to go ahead and run. Since you're calling me to do that, if you want me to win, let me win. If not, I understand, and the glory is going to go to you either way. Well, guess what happened that next fun week was not fun. The water broke in our house, so it was winter, it was January, so the whole water system froze under the house. The pipes had broken. We had chickens dying right and left. My truck broke down. It's like everything that could hit the fan at that moment. And the devil was attacking me, but I thought, this is confirmation that the Lord wants me to do this.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to. Okay, so fast forward. So I'm knocking doors. I'm trying to get my message out there. My 3 main points were liberty, family, reform. So liberty is individual rights, the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Family is, as we said, biblical values, trying to protect our parental decision making and marriage between a man and a woman, pro-life, and then reform, dodging the budget. At that time we didn't know what dodging the budget was, but cutting waste and abuse in the budget, transparency, accountability, judicial reform. Jay mentioned those were all things that I ran on. Well, I got down and I talked about I wanted to uproot the good old boy system in Columbia. Well, I want to tell you about one house that I knocked on close to the election. It was June, so it was just a few days out, and it was getting dark, and I was trying to use every minute of daylight right at the end. And it was going on about 9 o'clock, so it was almost dark. And I was like, well, let me hit one more house. So I went down this driveway, and there was an adult man and his adult son working out in the yard. They were kind of putting their tools up. Looked like they had just finished up working in the yard. Well, I said, hey, excuse me, can I talk to you? I'm Josiah Magnuson. I'm running for state house, trying to break up the good old boy system and bring some reform and transparency and accountability to state government. And the guy goes, you better not do that. We're not going to support you. Wow. And I said, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, okay, so these people don't agree with me. And he's like, no, we're not going to support you doing this. You're going to ruin your life. He said, me and my son here have both been involved in some state agency. I forget which one he said. He said, it's worse than you think it is in Columbia. Wow. And you're going to ruin your life as a young man. I was 24 years old at the time. And he said, if you were to win and get into this seat in the state house, so we're not going to support that. And I said, well, I believe that I'm supposed to do this, and I do have a plan, but and some people would say, well, did that dissuade you from running? No, it emboldened me. I was like, wow, I am not on the wrong track here. I have to go forward and fight the battles that come. So that's what I tried to do, and the Freedom Caucus kind of grew out of meetings in my office. About in 2019, we started meeting, and constitutional carry at the time was one of the big issues that we kind of united behind, but all of the conservative issues that just seemed like they weren't getting the time of day, we would talk about and strategize and say, how can we get these things on the agenda? And so that's continued to grow, and I'm grateful for the support that's come, because again, these men and women are sacrificing so much to be here, and those that are running for office are sacrificing. So I'm grateful for that, and those that are supporting us, we can't do it without you. So that's a little bit about me and my journey. Thank you.
Other bills that we're going to be doing, reporting?
So, okay, yeah, medical freedom, we need to, so I have a medical free speech bill. During COVID, there was doctors that called me and said, this is all overblown, why are we shutting things, locking down? And I said, why don't you speak out about it then? Why don't you talk to the press and, make that public? And they said, because the hospital systems, the places we work,
that's right,
would fire us.
Yeah.
We can't do
that's
it.
right.
So we need to stop retribution against medical professionals.
Yes.
I think that's a key deal. We also have a bill to take the COVID vaccine off the market.
Yes.
Because I think it's a fraud.
Yeah.
The shedding that we think is happening, that needs to be ended. So that's a bill that I have. Pro-life bills, of course, S323 has been mentioned. equal protection for the unborn child. I'm a firm believer in that. We talk about dodging the budget. A lot of social issues can be debated. There's a wide window of, debate on social issues, family type stuff. But what really is kind of the third rail in Columbia is the fiscal issues. When you start talking about cutting spending and actually making room to cut taxes, then that's kind of political heresy. You don't touch that. So, but it has to be addressed. Our state spending, our budget is just increasing so wildly the last decade or so, and it needs to stop. Income taxes, we want to get the income tax to zero if we can. We're going to keep working on that. And the Permanent Bill of Rights has been mentioned. I've been sponsoring that, and we've gotten some traction. We have a lot of support for it, but again, it's just a situation where leadership won't bring it to the floor, and so we do what we can to offer these solutions, but ultimately the Speaker of the House is who controls what bills come to the floor. So we need somebody who can lead that will make those decisions to prioritize conservative legislation. And close primaries, I don't want to forget that one.
Oh, yeah.
Closing the primaries
Right.
is very popular, but has never
Not in Columbia.
been brought to the floor.
Yeah, look, there's a couple bills I'd like to
Yeah,
talk
please,
about,
Brian.
that I've sponsored. Ivermectin over the counter, like it is in most countries.
Good.
And we're getting some support from even leadership on that, and one of our guys in the Freedom Caucus has a connection to RFK Jr., who we're trying to get him to call the head of the subcommittee and say, hey, pass this. There is, I have a bill that allows firefighters, police, first responders to not pay state income tax, because they don't get paid enough, and then we take a lot of their money back.
Amen.
So, and to answer Sarita's question, yeah, we do cry. 3 years ago, we had the heartbeat bill, and it was, like I just said, my wife works at Planned Parenthood. She works out on the sidewalk as a counselor. So I had whole churches texting me that we're praying for you guys. And it was really, really, really heavy. I was sitting at my desk. I shut the door of my office and I opened my email, and the first email said, I don't know who you are, but I know what you fight for, and we're praying for you. And I was like a sprinkler got turned on. I just cried it out. And another time I was having a rough time, and Ryan McCabe, another good Christian Freedom Caucus member, walks in to my office, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, and I remember he leaned on my desk and he looked at me and he said, "The moment you realize your time down here is your ministry, it's all going to go away. You're going to be fine." So it's a ministry. We do this because we love the state, we love this country, and we love God, and we want to pass bills that would make God please God. So anyway, I'm going to hand this over before I start proving to you that we can.
As my husband says, somebody's cutting onions in here. So for me, a couple of bills that I'm going to be putting forth, I'm really going to be focusing in on the abortion pill, the chemical abortion pill.
Yeah.
Good.
Because there are no regulations on it, and it's killing more babies than actual abortion does, than medical abortion does, is actual abortion. So when I spoke with the Attorney General, he said that there's nothing we can do to regulate that. And I said, but we regulate pornography, we regulate online gambling, we keep that out of the state. There's gotta be a way to keep it out of the state, because I ordered abortion pills to my home. And I was never asked if I was a female, and I was never asked if I was pregnant or how far along I was. Never asked if I'd seen a doctor or had an ultrasound. And they were buy one, get one free. So, yeah, that was eye-opening for me. And then, so we're gonna try to ban them. So that's gonna be the first bill. The second bill, if they won't do that one, is to try to make them a Schedule 3, like an opioid or a fentanyl. They kill more people than fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
So, we need to be regulating that. And another bill that I'm going to propose, that I'm sending in to be put forth on December 15th is testing our water system, because the abortion pill does not metabolize in your body like if you were to take a Percocet after surgery. That metabolizes and neutralizes, and so when you go to the bathroom, it doesn't go into the water. Then the water goes to the wastewater treatment facility and is recycled and made into drinking water. When a woman takes the abortion pill, not only does she have the baby in it, usually goes into the toilet or her bathroom drain. The pill does not neutralize, so it is being expelled, and they're not testing for it, so thus they're not filtering it out. So we are consuming, and it has been tested in 3 states, Virginia, Illinois, and Texas, all in college towns, opened up the taps, just regular tap water, tested the tap water, and the mifepristone is in the water system.
Wow.
So we're drinking that, and we wonder why we're having low fertility rate, or fertility rates dropping. Livestock and cattle are having miscarriages at a rate that has never been seen as far as anyone knows. So it is very detrimental to our environment and to our bodies. So that, I'm also gonna file that bill to do that. Like Jackie said, we have the keeping males out of women's prisons and homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters, and women out of men's spaces as well. And then reforming the family court system. It is unfairly slanted against fathers. And as long as the father is not abusive, every child needs his mom and his dad.
Right.
And right now it starts out at an 80-20 ratio of women getting custody. And they get 80% of the custody. So the men get 20% less every other Saturday or whatever it is. We wanted to start at 50-50.
Yes.
So that's what I've been focusing on, and what's going to come up, I hope, this coming session. And we just hope we get some of these meaningful bills, because we hear things like, we just don't have time to move that personhood bill forward, or to close the primaries. We just don't have time to do that. But you know what we do have time for? Casinos, online gambling, Scout Motors, historic tax reform that's actually going to raise the taxes of about 60 to 70% of the population of South Carolina. We got time for that. But we don't have time to protect our babies, our children, women, and our population from destruction. So those are some things that we're going to focus on. And I guess Jackie said, do we want to take questions?
Does anybody want to ask a question?
So kind of a twofold question. One, I'm sure in your churches, you probably run across Christians who are not interested in politics and who actually think you shouldn't be in politics. How would you address that to get people involved? And the second part of the question is, because you are Christians in government and you want righteous laws by righteous leaders, biblical values, I'm sure that you've been told that you want Christian nationalism. Tell me your response to those questions, because I'm really interested in that.
Somehow the left has taken 2 words, Christian and nationalism, stuck them together and turned them into this evil thing. So I'm a Christian nationalist. It's insane. My wife has been talking about this for about 2 weeks. She's out on the sidewalk, and she says, "Where are the men? Where are good, godly men in our churches? Why are they not out here fighting with us?" It's, you know, a couple old retired guys, and there's no men stepping in up. And you know, I've been paying attention for a long time. You know, 15 years, and everybody knows how political I am. But the man that comes up to me in church and whispers in my ear, "Hey, I agree with what you're saying on Facebook." I'm like, why are you whispering?
Right.
Because he's afraid that his wife will hear him agree with a conservative in my conservative church. Or I knock a lot of doors. And I usually finish with, hey, if they support me, would you like a yard sign? And I'll have a man say, well, our neighbor is really liberal, and we've been friends with them for 12 years. Yeah, we don't want to offend them. And I'm like, well, you know they're liberal. Are you afraid to tell them that you're conservative? Like a lawn sign. And it just blows my mind. We need good, godly men to stand up and be vocal. You know, lead. Start leading. Our churches aren't leading. We've been neutered.
Right.
You know, and they're terrified. I heard this, 2 months ago. If your church did not address Charlie Kirk a few days after he was shot and assassinated because your pastor was afraid to address that, you need to change churches.
Amen.
You know, why are they're so afraid to offend? And persecution when you're a Christian is a blessing. You're over the target, and we're so terrified. And I think it's because we've had it so good for so long. We haven't been persecuted in the American church. So we need men to stand up and be vocal, say what you believe, say the truth, say the biblical truths, and we'll be fine if everybody stands up. People are terrified.
Thank you.
Personal mic. Well, okay, thank you for that question, because I really feel that is a question of our times, right? That we have to deal with. So much so that I wrote a book about it called Biblical Civics, so shameless plug. If you'd like one, I'd be happy to let you purchase one here this evening. I guess you had a two-part question, as you said. So one is, are we Christian nationalists? I don't consider myself a Christian nationalist. I think that there is a strain of true Christian nationalism that basically says that we should, implement the Old Testament regulations and things of the law of Moses. I don't believe in that. But what I do believe is that Jesus is the king of this earth. That includes the church and that includes the state. Yes. Now, the church and the state are different institutions, but we interact with both of them as Christians on a daily basis. I think that there's basically 5 what we call jurisdictions, 5 authority structures that God has designed. There's our own individual self-government, which is the foundation of all of it. But then there's also the family, there's the church, there's the economic world where you have employers, employees, and then you have civil government. Well, Jesus is king of all of that. And because he's king, he has certain rules and certain laws and limits on those jurisdictions, what authorities they can have and what authorities they can't have, which is the basis, therefore, of liberty.
Right.
Because if God has established, and I believe he has in his word, limits on civil government and specific narrow purposes for that use of power, of the sword, if there's certain limits on that, then people are free, to do what they are called to do, what God has designed them to do, and government has to stay in its own lane. So I think that the biblical foundation of government is the foundation of freedom, and that actually inspires and encourages me to go out and fight for limits on civil government, but also for Christians to get engaged and involved. I'll give you one more thing as far as to answer that question for how do you get Christians to be interested. I think you have to show them why they should care, not only because Jesus is king and Lord of all of the earth, not the devil, not some tyrant, Jesus is, okay, but then also when you allow for tyrants to be in charge and evil to prosper, that is bad for the gospel. Because if you want to go to a theological standpoint, when people see sin prosper and not be punished, then they misunderstand the judgment of God on sin. They don't believe that there's actually a judgment coming for their sin, and so they therefore don't understand the need for a Savior. So I think why God has put civil government on the earth is to demonstrate that sin does have a penalty. When you hurt somebody else, then you're going to have justice come back to you, and therefore that sets up for, in my belief, for the plan of salvation and to see the grace of God then come as that solution.
Cool.
I would say, if I'm not a Christian nationalist, then am I an atheistic globalist?
Right?
So I think, you know, we have to define and I tell this to the Freedom Caucus all the time, we have to define ourselves. We cannot let the left define us. We cannot let the rhinos define us. We have to define ourselves. And so I am frustrated with the church right now. I think I might be more frustrated with the church than I am with the rhinos in Columbia. And I'm pretty frustrated with them. They passed a hate speech ordinance in Spartanburg County. Spartanburg City did. I mean, we know those cities are pretty liberal when it comes to their city councils. And I remember when it was coming, a constituent sent it to me. I don't live in the city, but I said, I need to go speak against it. So I sent it out to my fellow reps in Spartanburg County. 3 reps showed up out of 8 or 9. Me, Josiah, and Rosalind Henderson Myers, and she was for it. So there were 2 of us who spoke against it. But I called numerous pastors of major churches who have parishioners, whatever you want to call them, who live in the city. And I said, do you know what this is going to do? You're protected because you're a pastor, but they're not. I couldn't get anybody to show up.
Wow.
I was so frustrated. And the church has sat back for so long. And that's how Roe versus Wade got implemented. And the killing of probably 80 million babies. I know they say 63, but California does not report their numbers. So you know it's more than 63 because they don't, and New York doesn't report their numbers. 2 of the largest states, largest abortion mills in the world, in those 2 states. So you know it's around 83 million, 80 something million. So, you know, we have to show the church. Paul in the Bible, he used his civic knowledge of the Roman Empire because he was a Roman citizen and a Jew to get an audience with the Caesar. He worked within the confines of his government and appealed to his government. That's biblical.
Right.
Being involved in appealing to your government is biblical. Every one of our founders, even the ones who didn't, they may have been just deists, they weren't necessarily Christians like we would be, they still believed that the foundation of the Bible is the foundation of America and the Constitution. Even the deists, and I believe that was Ben Franklin and who was the other one? Thomas Jefferson. Yes, even they believed. But we have let the term separation of church and state neuter the church.
That's
as
right.
Jay just said. So.
Good.
Hi, I'm Diana Simone. I'm with the Born to Fly Project to Stop Child Trafficking. 2 things. First, we really look forward to Elizabeth Enns representing us next year at this time and joining you all.
We did too.
And secondly, I followed you all and Jackie on X. And Jackie, I think you introduced a bill. It wasn't about child trafficking, but it was something regarding that. And I wanted to ask if there's any talk of a bill to require anti-trafficking prevention training in our schools. A number of states in the U.S. do require that, including North Carolina, and our curriculum is part of their recommended list of curriculums. So I'd love to see that happen in South Carolina also.
Well, great. Well, thank you. It's nice to see you. Thank you for your work. We definitely appreciate it and it's needed. Particularly as I learned when I was running for office here in Fort Mill, because a lot of the trafficking is happening along the state border between North Carolina and South Carolina, so we need to be very diligent about that. And I know that our new Sheriff, Tony Breeden, has made it a priority, so we're very blessed and lucky to have him as our new sheriff. And so as far as any bills that are coming up, I personally don't know right now, but I know that I will go back and check and see. Does anybody here know of anything particular that's coming up? It's definitely important, and I'll check on that for you. So yeah, so thank you for your work that you're doing. Appreciate it.
If there is no bill, write it up.
Do we have any model legislation? If there's model legislation, get it to us.
Okay.
We'll file it.
I will do that.
I thought somebody back there raised their hand, you know? If not, I got a question.
Okay.
I have a question specifically on AI. With the expansion of AI, does South Carolina have an adequate energy supply to take care of AI growth and development in our state? And if they don't, is that gonna increase our electricity rates for the common citizen?
Yes, it is.
Pick up the microphone.
I think they increase regardless of whether we're using it or not, it just increases. And I think that's also the reason that they're trying to start VC Summer back up. One of the reasons, that's the failed nuclear site. It's about 20 miles west of Columbia. You guys all know about that public-private partnership went out of business.
Yep.
$9 billion, how much did the state spend?
Not quite that.
Give to Westinghouse.
1.3,
Oh,
but
1.3.
you're talking about VC number, yes,
VC
9 billion,
Summer,
yes.
about
that's right.
$9 billion,
Yeah,
and then they walked away
discount.
from it, with our money, and then to revamp it, they're saying, well, who's gonna pay us back? If we do allow a company to do that, I think it's more than halfway built, we should say, well, you get that, you don't get any more taxpayer dollars. So that's all I know as far as us ramping up the infrastructure, electricity wise, and we don't have it because AI sucks up a lot of energy.
Cause we're gonna build a plant, I think they're gonna build one in York County, aren't they? I think they're planning one here in York County.
But yeah, the short answer is yes, they're already in the process, I think, of raising rates, pretty much statewide, to try to keep up and build these data centers. And there's also a natural gas pipeline that's being built, in kind of the Midlands and Low Country area, to try to bring in natural gas. Some of it I understand, I mean, you've gotta keep up and build infrastructure for the future, but I don't think that the legislature needs to be subsidizing, and putting more burden, on the taxpayer for, AI.
That's right. And then, we do import a lot of our energy, right? Our natural gas? Are we a net importer for natural gas
Yes.
and energy?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we're gonna have to import it to support our infrastructure growth, right?
Yes.
That just kinda seems oxymoron if they don't increase nuclear power in our state. I don't know, I'm just talking, but I really have a.
Yeah, we agree. I think we gotta keep building. I don't think you stop the growth, and you gotta provide the energy needs for
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah.
But it has to be done the right way.
Yeah,
And there was a big energy bill that came up last spring
yeah, that one.
that was went to us on the House, and some members in the Freedom Caucus, I know myself and Sarita and Josiah, I don't know about Jay, but we voted for it while others voted against it. And one of the reasons why I voted for it was, it wasn't perfect. A lot of these bills that they put up have many different parts of it, and sometimes you have to vote for the bad stuff to get the good stuff. But the reason why I voted for it was because in Fort Mill, we have a very unique, somewhat unique situation. We're different than a lot of the state. South Carolina, we bring in our energy, our electricity, our natural gas from other places, from Georgia, from North Carolina. So, and in Fort Mill, we're kind of we have a lot of people here and a lot of energy needs. We have a lot of need for water. We get our water from Rock Hill.
Yep.
So we're relying on other places for our energy. And if what we need to do is we need to come up with new ways to be energy independent in Fort Mill and in South Carolina. And so that was one of the reasons why I voted for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we see our costs increase in everything right now. And so, we need to start bringing down costs of everything that we can, and we need to reduce our tax burden. And really one of the ways to do that is to cut spending, and that's really hard to get done in Columbia. Nobody wants to do it except for us.
And if I can make one more comment about that, speaking of the energy bill that I voted for and Jackie's speaking of, so there was a couple of wins that we got in that energy bill that I thought made it palatable at least. One was there was more provision for what we call power behind the meter, so that they're adding the ability for somebody, if you have a business, to actually create your own power, your own solar or hydroelectric, wherever you want, that you don't have to be getting from Duke or from other utilities. You can create your own, and they're making that a little easier to do. But then also, we had a policy win in terms of what we're talking about. The state shouldn't subsidize the growth of AI. We actually had a win on that because there was a provision in the bill when it was first drafted to say that I can't remember the exact details, but some company was going to get some infrastructure for free. It was going to be given to them. But Jordan Pace worked with some of the folks down there and was able to get it to make sure that it would say that they had to purchase that. So we're not just doing a giveaway to a private company. So that was, I thought, a win that I could vote for.
Thank you. Well, I got another one. This water pollution, I mean, what is the environmental department doing in South Carolina with your problem you have? Are they gonna test it? That should be a slam dunk. They should be testing all the water and getting it done. What's the holdup? Why don't they test that? Are they gonna test it? First of all, I hope you get that bill passed. And then number two, it should be a slam dunk. There shouldn't be any problem passing that bill. What's the matter with these people?
We should probably get Democrat sponsors on that because it's an environmental issue.
Yeah,
Right.
But
yeah.
because it has to do with abortion, they don't wanna touch it. And, I don't think, like, how many of you, this was the first time that you've ever heard about that today? Many of the people in the legislature don't know that this is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing till I went, to a conference in Idaho this year. And when I heard this, I was like, oh, I'm never drinking out of the tap. Like, how do you find a filter for that?
Yeah.
And the stories that we heard from people who work in water treatment plants of finding babies up against the filters, the grates, apartment buildings, their sewers were backing up. They found a 6-month-old baby in the pipe. This is happening in people's apartments, in people's homes. The abortion clinic is now the bathroom, and it's not an actual clinic almost anymore. So, but most people had never heard that. And so when I tell people, I heard the audible gasp in the room, and we have to educate people.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna start putting this out. I'm gonna start doing it probably weekly on my socials, talking about it. And I'm gonna start yelling and screaming about it until somebody pays attention and cleans our water. We had a runoff in Spartanburg today in our city government for the Public Works Commission, that they control the water. There was a runoff election, and I emailed both of the candidates. One of them is a female OBGYN, so I did not expect an answer back from her. And true to form, she did not email me back, but the other one did. And he said, this is absolutely something I would love to sit down and talk with you. So maybe it's going to individual water companies. So whoever provides your water, like ours is Spartanburg Water. So maybe going to and talking to them, showing them the study, showing them the scientific research, the data on it.
Yeah.
And educating people.
That's it.
Because when I came home and told this to my husband, he goes, that can't be right. And I was like, look at the study. He goes, oh my goodness. And it was a study done by Students for Life. And they did it in, like I said, 3 different states in college towns. So, but yeah, we're hoping this will get passed. I'm getting some bills sent into Columbia to have them drafted according to South Carolina State Code. But I hope they all get passed. But we do need to at least be studying our water supplies.
They should be educated. They should be educating themselves.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, that's their job. I know you guys are.
So, in Rock Hill, where I used to live, they test the water regularly, at least in my neighborhood. They would send around a little bag with a little bottle and say, please put your water in here and put it out and we'll pick it up, and they test the water. I don't think it would be that difficult to add a test to what they're already doing to see, because they're already paying to have neighborhoods tested. So to just add, we want you to test for this also, shouldn't be that big of a lift. So
Doesn't cost them
in,
much either.
right, so in areas where they're already doing that, because that water's coming directly out of Lake Wiley, and they just wanna make sure we're not gonna grow a third eye or something, but, you know, that kind of thing, it just shouldn't be that difficult to just add test for this.
Nobody's gonna ask, might keep going, is that okay?
Sure.
Let me know when you want. Okay, judicial reform, I mean, we've talked about it for a couple of years. You know, Clymer brought out a bill, and, you know, are they gonna do anything this year about, are they gonna finish the deal, or are they just gonna play games, or are we gonna get judicial reform in South Carolina? We're probably the last one, we're probably one of the worst in the whole country, right?
Us in Virginia.
We are, not banking on it, but there's a guy that lives on the coast named Rom Reddy, and he created Doge SC. And
Oh.
so he's pushing that.
Okay.
And I haven't been in this game long enough to, you know, I say don't underestimate a billionaire who jumps in and wants something. He's already kind of twisting the arms of some of the politicians, and we're scratching our heads going, why is this guy conservative all of a sudden? Well, he's got the ear of that guy, and he's threatening him. So one of his big things that he's pushing is judicial reform. And we don't know what's gonna happen. My friend Joe White, my desk mate, had a press conference on Saturday. We had about 50 people there. Ralph Norman, Alan Wilson, and two guys running for Attorney General, Stumbo and Pasco, were both there. And it's gaining traction. But, you know, I've always thought that with closing the primaries too, and we've had a bill for 19 years.
Yeah.
In some form or the other, but you don't know. It's gonna take rooms of people calling legislators. And, you know, I don't know about the rest of the people at the desk, but I get a lot of form letters, and I'll get 50 of the same exact emails. Personalize it, say, hey, I'm a constituent, I want judicial reform. We don't want the lawyer legislators choosing the judges that they are gonna go in front of. We don't want them setting their salaries. It's insane. If you look at it from the outside, the conflict of interest is just, I can't believe it, even now. If it ever becomes normal to me, you need to vote me out. Because it's really crazy. So hopefully, it's gonna take grassroots, and it's not one of those sexy things, you know, that people wanna get behind. They're like, judicial reform, what is that, you know? But they don't realize the lawyer legislators run this state, and the legislature is not a co-equal branch of government when they're appointing judges.
I'll touch on that briefly too. This is one of the main reasons why I ran for office in the first place, was because I found out that we had attorneys going to the state house and state senate and electing the people who they then went and practiced in front of, and I couldn't believe that we were tolerating that in South Carolina. So, a couple of things. We actually did get a bill passed last year that touches judicial reform. It's very weak though. It's more cosmetic, I would say, than anything. And unfortunately, that's what you see sometimes, is once the Freedom Caucus brings an issue forward and hammers it long enough, then the other side will pass a bill that solves the issue so that they can kind of release some of the pressure and, you know, get the focus on something else. But I will say that I think that there was some good aspects to that bill. One was that it creates transparency on the Judicial Merit Selection Commission. So when those hearings are happening, you can see what's going on and public can watch, because in the past that hadn't been true. Okay. And then second of all, it does give to the governor 4 of the appointments, so the governor doesn't control that body that chooses who can run to be a judge, but he has some input. So that's a good thing. We're stepping in the right direction there. But let me, I guess, give you a little more of a dimension on why this matters, because you have legislators who are attorneys, who have their family members getting on the bench, running to be judge and being a shoe-in to be elected, you have their spouse, their wife, their son, their uncle or aunt, just a lot of nepotism there. And then you also have legislators who are attorneys who get their law partner on the bench. And this happened again this last year, where a guy from Charleston, he had his law partner up for election, and it was going to be a unanimous consent, because that's the way that they like to do it, is they just sort of breeze them all through by acclamation, and it takes somebody standing up to object and request a vote because it's wild, because of the state constitution you're required to vote on the judges, but unless somebody objects and requires that, then they just breeze them through anyway. So I stood up and said, Mr. Speaker, I object. Mr. President, President for a joint assembly. Mr. President, I object. Well, this gentleman, he comes running through the chamber, and he goes, how could you do this when this man's family is in the gallery? This is so embarrassing. I will not forget this. He's Republican, but he's the attorney that his law partner is up to be a judge. He can go back and practice in front of that same judge once he gets in there. And I so much as requested that we vote on the guy. And because of that, I had to be given a tongue lashing, and that he's not going to forget it, whatever that means, that he's going to now, I guess, vote against all my bills or something. Who knows? Whatever political retribution he thinks he can give me, he's going to give me, because I wanted us to just be transparent on when we were voting on a legislator's law partner to be a judge.
His law partner was a Democrat who was endorsed by Planned Parenthood. And he was getting all the Republicans to vote for this guy. And because Josiah said I object, we had to vote in public, and he lost.
But I do want to say, I think that is a great example of what the Freedom Caucus is all about, because 98% of the legislators who were voting for this guy had no idea of the situation. But the 16 or 17 Freedom Caucus plus the other, whoever, there's other Republicans that kind of often are aligned with us, because we have these discussions, because we share this information, because we research, they knew that and we knew that. So when Josiah objected, we were able to know that we needed to vote against him and why. And then the other Republicans kind of followed suit, because they didn't want to vote for a Democrat and have it be on record. So I think one of the really wonderful benefits of being part of this caucus and is the being educated, learning, discussing, knowing what you're voting on. Reading the bills and understanding what you're voting on, and I think that is sorely lacking in the legislature. People are just voting yes because they're told to, without understanding what is in the bill and what they're actually voting on. So one of, I think, moving forward, one of the things that we've been trying to do, at least since I've been in here, is to build relationships with other Republicans and Democrats to try to share the information that we have with them so that they can make smart choices while they're there. And they're always talking about the Republicans are splintered, and I think one of the things that we talked about is really building those relationships outside of the caucus so that we can all be better. So I think that's something that we're going to focus on. So I think, I know
we need to make a clarification. So in that particular race, the guy still won, unfortunately.
Oh, he did.
But I think what Jay is thinking of, we actually did defeat a Democrat. Well, James Smith is, I think, who we were thinking of. James Smith was up for a judgeship, and because we exposed that, he had ran as a Democrat for governor. But everybody was like, well, he's such a good man, but he's going to rule on the bench as a Democrat. So anyway, so we were able to torpedo his candidacy. So we do definitely have some wins on the judicial front, but unfortunately that situation that I'm speaking of where I objected, we still voted, and that gentleman did become a judge. So we still have a lot of work to do, is the point.
Well, I know, they have a very long distance to drive home, so I don't wanna keep them. I'm really grateful since I'm from Fort Mill and I only have a 10-minute drive home. I really appreciate you all coming all the way up here to Fort Mill and speaking to everyone here in the room. I know everyone's really grateful too, and thank you.
Yes.
If no one else has any questions. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You got 5 minutes for some people to pray for you?
Absolutely.
Come on up and pray for me. You get some prayer warriors up here. They need prayer.
Come on,